Bestseller is best-selling. Best-selling doesn't mean best writing. It means that it's made the best amount of sales.
Published 38 best-selling books. What's the strategy to publish a best-selling book?
Making sure it's being marketed and making sure you're selling as many books as possible.
What is a good approach to get to the process of writing a really good book?
Who's the reader? What challenges do they have? What do they want? What do they want to achieve after they've read your book?
Writing a book for someone who is just writing for the sake of sharing their story, and writing a book for someone who is wanting to use that piece of content to build their brand.
The worst thing people can do is think they need to write a book that inspires people but not actually help them with my business.
If someone was to start building a brand right now, what would you say to them?
People think a brand is like a logo. Because I'm passionate about it, that's become my brand.
You have had to deal with imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome is something within our psychology. Imposter syndrome comes up usually when we're about to become unsafe. Your business can grow and develop, but if you don't grow and develop, you're going to get left behind. Delegation is about trust. We don't care if they follow the process. We're delegating the outcome. It's the top priority above anything else in my business.
What's up, my smart friend? Before you jump straight into this episode, there are 3 boxes I'd love you to check while you watch. First things first, please make sure to hit the subscribe or the follow button down below, because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach on this platform and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Second, a lot of friends always reach out to me and say something like, "Hey, Arrey, I really did enjoy this particular segment of this episode." What I want you to do, if you get to a point like that, pick up your phone and send this to a friend and say, "Hey, check this out between 10 to 15 minutes. There's something very important I'd love you to see." Number 3, please make sure to check out the links in the description for very helpful resources. You're going to find the link to join the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for friends who want to learn and master a high-income digital marketing skill. Whether your goal is to build your personal brand, become a freelancer, or get a job in digital marketing, the Smart Club is going to be the right place for you. Also, you're going to find the link to join our 21,000 Smart Friends on email, where you're going to receive an email from me once every week. Plus, down below, you're also going to see links to connect with the guest. So please make sure you tick those 3 boxes and enjoy the rest of this episode.
What I'm going to try and do in this particular interview is that I'm going to ask questions like I'm a 5-year-old, just waiting for the answers, and so that you can literally just guide me on how you think that we should approach it best. But the first question we always ask some of the guests, or most of the guests, is how do you feel about yourself in this current phase of your life?
Oh, that's a good question. Pretty good, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like we all have seasons in life, you know. Some seasons can be dark and cold, and some seasons can be super summery and really warm and enjoyable. And I think we go through seasons, but we need all of the seasons, right? I think a lot of us go through challenges and we think, oh God, why has it always come to this? But it's important to have both positive and negative. And I'd say where I feel I'm at a really good point at the moment, where I feel like I've had a lot of ups and downs over the years in business and podcasting and book writing, and it's definitely been a whirlwind. But I feel like I'm really happy with where we're at a time now. I'm growing the team really well, and I'm loving being able to give people job opportunities that I never thought in a million years I'd ever be able to afford to do. So just feel like it's a really great, exciting time of giving back at the moment, to be really honest with you.
Right. One of the things you talked about earlier, which I watched in one of your interviews, which I'm literally very curious to go to talk about. But you said even if you are the biggest speaker, the biggest podcaster, the biggest author, there's always a story that you haven't yet told. Now, for you to kick off this particular episode, what is one story that you haven't told, which you probably wish that a lot of people knew about you?
I talk a lot, so there's not a huge amount that I've probably not said. I mean, there's lots of little things in life that we don't share because maybe they're not relevant or they're not necessarily needed. For me, it's probably how I transitioned from being a coach and being in business to being a book writer and author. One of the things which I often think people see is they see what I would call the rags to riches story. So clinical depression, really unwell, now best-selling author, award-winning, and it's like that rags to riches, right? I genuinely believe everybody has a rags to riches story, but it doesn't have to be a rag to a rich. Like, I don't feel like I'm overly wealthy. It's not like I'm like, oh, I've made it. There are always places we can go. But what people don't realize is in the middle of this rags to riches, there's usually something else going on in the middle. It's not like a straight trajectory. I thought writing my first book, I was already in a coaching industry. I was already in the coaching business, and I was loving helping people. But what I probably never really shared was I was really bored. Sometimes you just give a lot to everyone and you're always coaching people and you're always there for them. But it's like, oh God, another day of coaching. And I'm like an action taker. I like a bit of a challenge. I like to be a bit different. And one of the stories I've never really told was sort of making the decision to no longer coach people. Ironically, I still coach my team and I still coach some of my clients. You know, when you've just committed to being something and showing up as something for so long, you know, I was doing so much talking about coaching, and I used to always coach really in the female empowerment area. You know, it was very much females and all women empowerment. I'm not saying I'm not now, but one of the stories I've never really shared was why I stopped doing that, because I think there's a big world that we live in at the moment where it's very much like women, feminism and everything. And I'm not for feminism. I'm not saying I'm anti-feminism, but I don't think it's not the only thing for us to champion, you know? And I was very well known as, if you want to talk about female empowerment, Chloe's your speaker. And actually I was like, that's not the only thing I like talking about, you know? And I think sometimes you have to change how you're branded and change what you're known for. And that was probably something I've never really shared, was how I did change it. I walked away from coaching and coaching only women to now publishing books. And actually the reason was most men's books are really freaking good, you know? And I was like, actually, I need to be creating this platform. So yeah, that's probably something.
Yeah, I read something about you. You talked about publishing. You said actually that your very first book you published wasn't even your book. It was your mom's book,
Exactly.
like a children's book. Do you want to talk a bit about that and that transition phase? I remember you talked about getting to an event, and then every speaker had a book on the table. When you're looking around, you'll be like, people are saying, okay, this is the market, the audience, but you are saying every speaker here, this is my audience, this is what I should be selling to. I think it would be interesting if you share a bit about that.
Yeah. So to kind of go back there, so that was when I was coaching and I was very much in the female empowerment space. And I wanted to become a speaker. And I was speaking on these stages and I was walking around the event. I'm a massive believer in, even if you're the speaker, always be in the audience. In order to be a good speaker, you need to be a good audience member. Like, the worst thing is if you're a speaker and then you're on your phone when everyone else is talking. Like, that's not a good speaker. Anyway, so
you feed very well off from that energy.
So much. So I was speaking at an event and I was in the audience and I saw loads of the other speakers had books. And I just thought, hang on, are people not going to think I'm great because I don't have a book? And maybe I need to have a book. And books had really helped me through going through the clinical depression that I faced and really helping me come out of that. And so I thought, you know what, I need to write this book. And so I decided I was going to commit to writing a book. And I spoke to my mum about it. And she said, oh, no, Chloe, you've always wanted to write a book. And she could remember from years ago when I had been depressed, I'd said I wanted to write a book. But I was like, what if I do it wrong? What if this doesn't work? And she said, well, Chloe, I've always wanted to do a children's book series. So why don't we try with mine first? I had no idea what I was doing. Like, she designed the graphics. I was like, right, I'll research the marketing. I'll research all of the sort of technical stuff, the boring bits. And I fell in love with the process, like the rush, the adrenaline, the seeing the reaction when she did really well on Amazon. And then I was like, right, now it's my turn. So yeah, a lot of people think my first book was my book. It was the first nonfiction book and the typical book we published, but it wasn't the first ever book we published. Yeah.
And looking back right now at the journey, you have been able to, published 38 best-selling books. And for me, when I think about it, I'm like, Chloe has a blueprint that has worked at least 38 times. And that's how I kind of think about it. What's the strategy to publish a best-selling book?
Yeah, that's a juicy one. So the strategy to publish a best-selling book is, it sounds really bad. And I'm really honest. I'm really open, as you know. Best-selling doesn't mean best writing. And a lot of people talk about best writing, I'm going to write the best book, right? And I agree with that. Write a really good book, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bestseller. Bestseller is best selling. It means that it's made the best amount of sales. So the secret to publishing a bestseller is making sure it's being marketed and making sure you're selling as many books as possible at one point in time that everyone's buying, right? You need it to be a rush, because Amazon and Waterstones, they're going to share your book when they make money from it. If your book's not making sales, they're not going to suggest it. They're not going to recommend it. So they will recommend books that are making lots of sales.
That's very interesting. And so in publishing a book right now, so you would say that the greatest, or one of the greatest momentum, or the energy you put, it's marketing towards the release of the book. Correct. Because some people will put a lot of energy in just the creative process of just writing it, and then later on the marketing. I think I read a stat somewhere on the internet, and they said for a first-time author, an average number of books that they sell is, I think, 200. I was like,
Yeah.
really? I wanted to circle a little back, Chloe, but even before we go back, why books in the first place? I read part of your story. You talked about being a chartered accountant, and one time you get a card with your name on it, which says Chloe Bisson, a director, and then you're looking at it and you said, at this point, it's like, I lost my sense of purpose. Talk to me about what that moment meant for you and how you transitioned into you running your book publishing company.
So I was a director at the age of 24. I thought it was everything I ever wanted. You know, I was being very good at school, listened to all the teachers. My family couldn't afford university, so I went straight into work and I just worked really hard. I thought I always wanted to be a director. I was like, my parents wanted to make me proud, you know, be proud of me and that sort of stuff. And I was like, I'm going to be so proud when I get there. And I got there and I had the director's office and I had the name card and I had the, you know, the business card and it said Chloe Bisson director. And I was like, yeah, I've made it. And then it was like a week later, it just wore off. Like the salary was amazing. The job was, like, in theory, great. And I was just so bored. And I went to the doctors because I was just not feeling myself. And that's when it all sort of changed for me, because the doctor had said I was clinically depressed. I was so surprised because I was like, what? I've got everything I ever wanted. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be cheery. And it was just not what I thought it would be. And so when I was going through that, and to paint a picture, that was 6 months I was off work for with severe clinical depression. I was really, like, it sort of spiraled downwards before it came back. A book saved my life, to be really honest. People were recommending me like leaflets to read and, you know, the doctor's stuff. And I was like, oh my God, if someone gives me that again, I'm going to throw it at them. I was like, I just don't want that. And then a friend of mine who had also had depression before said, read this book. And it was a book called Reasons to Stay Alive. And it's by a guy called Matt Haig. And he talks really honestly about depression and what he went through. So when I was reading this book, like, I actually laughed because I was like, this is exactly what depression is like. And it was so nice to hear it from someone who's been through it and lived it. And I don't remember this, but I said to my mum at that time, one day I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write a book about what it's really like. You know, I'm going to write a book and tell this story. And I didn't remember that at all until I started writing my first book. And my mum said, oh, this is the book that you wanted to write years ago. And I was like, what? Like, because I was so in denial of the depression that I'd blocked it all off. It was just like so amazing that people were coming over to me at events and being like, Chloe, your book saved my life. You know, like it changed my world, the strategies you've shared, the advice. And I thought, God, like, how can I not do this anymore? And that's where I just had this purpose of like, if I can speak on stages and people read my books and publish other people's books, then we're actually changing lives every single day. Like, what more could we possibly want?
I think that I totally relate for me. So a bit of my journey, 2020, I was traveling and I got stuck at because I missed my flight because I didn't calculate the time zone very well in Turkey. So I ended up sleeping at the airport because I didn't want to go out, get somewhere. Like, the next flight is in about 12 hours. Do I go out, get somewhere, and then come back and then start onboarding? I had to sleep at the airport to wait to catch the next flight. So when I got back home, I remember sitting down and saying to myself, this was a lesson learned. I was trying to put the pieces together and say, what lesson did I learn from this experience? And I remember I decided at the time that I was going to share that with my email list, which had just started. When I wrote the first email, the email about the story, I sent it out. I'm like, these are the lessons. These are the things that I even took the time to do when I sat down at the airport. And everybody was like, this was so cool. Like, the story was so good. And I'm asking, like, you guys like this story? Like, just a nonsense story? And for me, that was the start of me publishing an email newsletter. I think fast forward right now, I have about 21,000 plus people subscribed to the newsletter, which we're sharing every week. And so you talking about that, trying to think about that moment and what it came from it, I think that it's really profound. One time a guy sent me as well an email and said, hey, I just read an email from you. To be honest with you, I was about to commit suicide before I read this. I was like, oof. This is the reason why I keep writing these pieces, even if it takes a toll on me. But I want to circle a bit more because you're always out there, and if you think about it, in essence, you're always giving out energy. How do you recharge?
Yeah, that's been something I've been learning over the years. The first couple of years in business, I was not very good at recharging. It was like go, 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 go. You know, always giving, and then my tank was empty. Now in the last couple of years, like, I just love being outdoors. So I've got a couple of things I do. I love going for walks. Like sometimes I'll just like go for walks and listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks. I love listening to books, which is ironic when I, work with books all the time. It's like I don't get away. But I love listening to a book we haven't published. It's really cool as well. But my favorite thing to do is journaling, like meditating. I love it. Some people just go all in and it's like a week off, but I just do it every day. I've done it every day for like 3 years, and it's been powerful in helping me with my mindset and just recharging.
I was kind of doing a little bit of research, and I want you to talk to someone who is like a first-time author right now, someone who is watching this and thinking about writing a book. When I read it, it said there were about 4 fears that people would usually think about when they become first-time authors. You have the professional fear, which is related to like your personal identity, maybe your place where you work, your title, things like that. There is the expertise fear, which is you questioning your ability. Personal fears, which is your fear of the expectation. And then there is also the creative fears, which is like, what's the process going to look like? So if you were to talk to me in a way that a 5-year-old could be able to understand, what is a good approach to get to the process of writing a really good book?
I love the fact that you mentioned as a 5-year-old would understand, because actually a book writing is actually really simple. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated, but as authors, when we're writing, we overcomplicate it because there's so many of those fears involved, so many emotions cloud our judgment. So the real simple process of writing a book is, number one, who's the reader? Who do you want to read this book? Like, keep it super simple. What challenges do they have? What problems do they have? What do they want? That's the main thing. Second thing is, what do they want to achieve after they've read your book? So where's the book going to end? For example, when I wrote Just Write the Damn Book, the end point is they will have written the damn book, like it's a very simple outcome. So what's the end point once they've read your book? The third step is, where are they beginning before they read your book? So you kind of create like an A to B journey. Where are they after and where are they before? And then the fourth step is to fill the gaps. So imagine you're going down a road, or you're going down cobbles. What's each step will look like? If you're going up a flight of stairs, what's all the steps? That's what you put in a book. What's chapter 1, what's chapter 2, what's chapter 3, and just take someone on the journey. The best written books are very simple. They know where their reader is before they read the book. They know where they are at the end of the book, and they just take them on the journey from A to B. And if you write a book like that, it will do really well because readers will finish reading it because they don't want to stop the journey.
I have a book that I published sometime in 2019. When I wrote my book, at some point I realized that for some reason I sat back thinking, because I run a marketing agency, will help businesses get clients on social media. So I sat back and I was trying to look at my process. I was like, hold on. Looks like most of the people who get my book end up becoming clients. So at the time I decided, I was like, I'll stop going out there for clients, and probably I should get my book into many more people's hands. The idea for me at the point was, get your book into many more people's hands. For every one, let's say hypothetically, I can't remember the number, but for every 100 people who got my book, I was getting off of the back, like maybe 3 to 5 of them will become a client maybe later on. And so for me, I decided I would chase the selling of books, get many more books out there, and worry less about getting marketing clients. Which leads me to the question that I wanted to ask in regards to the objective of writing a book, vis-a-vis, and I'm curious what you see in the field about writing a book for someone who is just writing for the sake of sharing their story, and writing a book for someone who is wanting to use that piece of content to build their brand and take their audience on a specific journey. How do you think we can approach that?
I always lean towards books that can do both rather than one or the other. There is definitely a one or the other for some books, right? I guarantee that even in your book, yes, you take them on a journey to get clients, you will have inspired them through the book, right? The worst thing people can do is think they need to write I need to write a book that inspires people, but not actually help them with my business, right? Or I want to write a book about my business, but not actually care about the reader. The best thing is both. But one thing I always say to anyone that works with us is, what's the business behind the book? What's the money that's going to come from the book? And as much as people say, and many people do say, do you know what? I've got this passion to write a book. I don't need to make millions. I don't want it to. That's great. But you also don't want to make a loss. You also don't want to put loads of time. It doesn't have to be money, right? It can be time loss into it and not get the return on your fulfillment. So for me, I always say to people, make sure that there's a way of you monetizing your book. Make sure there's a way of, like, for example, getting clients or building a brand. Maybe you want to be paid to speak, or maybe you want to get sponsorship for a podcast, for example. You know, there's lots of ways we can make money from a book, but I always recommend, even if it's a passion, even if it's like you just want to help people, you can do both.
Many times you look at people when you're writing their book. Let's talk about the end fears specifically. When they are thinking about writing a book, the fear is, am I good enough? Which is, and I'm asking this because you mentioned somewhere that you have had to deal with imposter syndrome. So people are asking themselves, am I good enough? Like, this content, is my story worth sharing? I know that's a thing that a lot of people ask. To people like this, what do you say to them?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is something within our psychology, right? Everybody has imposter syndrome. Even if we think we don't, we do. It just hasn't come up yet, because it's one of the things that's there to keep us safe. So what we've got to do if we have imposter syndrome, and that can be, I'm not good enough, who do I think I am, like all these sort of voices. The thing we've got to do, and it sounds really spiritual, but you've got to almost thank it, because it's trying to keep you safe. Imposter syndrome comes up usually when we're about to become unsafe, therefore out of control, into the unknown, outside of our comfort zone, and the best things happen there. So whenever we get imposter syndrome, what I recommend to people is see that as a green light, that you're doing the right thing. It's a sign that you're about to stretch yourself into a place where that's where the amazing stuff happens. Now, it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel good at all. It's like, what? You're crazy telling me to keep going. But whenever you face imposter syndrome, just challenge it. So from a logical perspective, whatever it's saying, whatever the voice is in your head, is it true though? And the very simple question is that a fact? So if you challenge that with logic, because imposter syndrome is based on emotion, not logic. Because logically, we know we're good, right? We know we're yeah, of course I am. I know my stuff. If, for example, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to be a rubbish writer. The question is that a fact? Well, no, it's not a fact. Move on to the next question. You have to find doubt. It's a bit like you imagine, in a jury, a jury's trying to vote on someone being guilty or innocent. You've got to create doubt. As soon as you create doubt in your imposter syndrome, it goes away, because it's like, oh, actually, I am. Even if I'm 1% good, I'm still not bad.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about focusing on proving it wrong, focusing on the facts, but also knowing that imposter syndrome is a really good thing. Whenever I get it now, where I'm at in my career, I'm like, okay, cool. This is a good thing. It means I'm stretching myself and I'm moving into the next step for me, which is exciting as well.
How important is a book cover to the whole process? And how do you think that people should? And the reason I'm asking is because just write a damn book. It's just text. Sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm asking, why did Clarina put her face on it? Because in a way, that's you selling your personal brand. But why did you just write text? So how do you think we should approach writing books? Should I want to put my face on it? Should I take my face away from it? Or like Becoming by Michelle Obama has a face on it, no face on it. What should I do? How should I approach that?
Exactly. So it depends on the type of book. If your book is an autobiography or a memoir, then of course your face needs to go on it. Just Write the Damn Book isn't actually about me. It's about writing books. So it doesn't have my face on it. But what I always recommend is have your face on the back of the book as the author. If you're writing a book that's a how-to book or a knowledge-based book, an expertise book, it's about the reader, not about us. And I think when we put our face on it, it's actually disconnecting from the reader and saying this is about me. Whereas what I always say to our authors is make sure the book's about your reader and it weaves you into it.
Because you're in the trenches, you know what works, you know how people should sell books. So if I want to get many more copies of my book into people's hands, what marketing mediums should I be looking at, or what is a good approach to thinking about my marketing?
It would depend on if it's the launch of the book or if it's after the launch, right? So we'll go for yours, which is after the launch, because a lot of people will put loads of effort into the launch of their book and forget after. Books open doors. When you have opportunities, you want to sell your book. So it kind of becomes a cycle. So the best thing you can do when it comes to marketing a book is just always have it available somewhere. It's all about the visibility of it. It's like selling anything. If you sell an online course, yeah, it's great at the beginning, but what if you don't sell anymore? How are you going to always get eyeballs? So, things like Facebook advertising or paid advertising is an option. The way we recommend it is through PR or media. So, getting in the media, getting on TV, getting on radio, For me, my number one strategy is speaking at events all the time, go on podcasts and be suggesting and recommending my book. So it's about,
which we're definitely going to link below this.
yeah, thank you. It's always about just being out there. My recommendation is leverage other people's audiences.
What's up, guys? Very quick one before you keep watching the rest of the video. So we have just announced the launch of the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for anyone who wants to learn a high income digital marketing skill. So I just wanted to have a quick break to tell you about it. 12 plus digital marketing skills that you can learn from, whether you're building your personal brand, whether you want to become a freelancer, a service provider, or your goal is to learn that digital marketing skill and land a digital marketing job. 12 plus digital marketing skills, and I'm personally going to mentor you for the next couple of months every week through my live masterclasses and everything like that. And so I just wanted to break here and ask you to go check it out. Down in the description, there's going to be a link. Go check it out and make sure that you enroll in the club before you continue watching the rest of the video. I look forward to seeing you on your very first club session.
All right. I want to transition a bit away from book to you building your brand and your team. One of the things I have, and I will be honest with you, I face a lot of difficulties when it comes to building my team. So I have a small team of about 3 right now. And sometimes it's so tough because you're trying to delegate. You have to become good at delegation, which I initially struggle with. I have to go and start reading or learning how to do that. And I'm curious how you approach. I know you have a team of about 10 to 15, and I'm curious, how do you approach things and how do you stay on top of them, making sure that the team is effective? Let's just talk about team building strategies.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So it depends on your personality. I used to be a control freak. So I always joke with my team that I'm a recovering control freak. When you're good at what you do and you deliver a good output and you start letting other people do it, sometimes we challenge because we're like, hold on, that's not my way.
Yeah.
So delegation is one of the hardest things that people face. And the thing you got to realize is we're not delegating the process. We don't care if they follow the process. We're delegating the outcome, right? So it's about, did they achieve the outcome, yes or no? So if, for example, I want my team to get more listeners on the podcast, if they decide to do a strategy that I've never tried before, but it gets the outcome, and they're good, like it's actually the metrics are met. It's not fake people, like it's legit stuff and it meets all the quality control that we wanted, then I don't mind how they do it. And it's a big shift as the leader to do that. The challenge we have as leaders in a business is if we don't trust, because that's what it is, right? Delegation is about trust. It's like letting go of the trust. If we don't trust them, they don't trust us as leaders. Because it works both ways, right? So I used to really struggle with this. It's taken me, my first team member started 5 years ago. She's still with me today and I'm so grateful and we get on really well and my team's just flourished since. I had to trust her to do it her way. And now she does it better than me, So it's about trust and also leading by example. So if, for example, I'm making loads of mistakes on work because I'm rushing it and then I ask them to do things really well, that's not fair because they're going to copy me. It's like a parent-child relationship. So I would say trust your team, delegate the outcome, not the process, and lead by example.
Really interesting. One of the other things I've been trying to do is really have an open conversations with the people on my team. It's like, hey, how can I be better? How can I help you? Sometimes someone has to show up and they don't show up. It's like, hey, this is not the regular you. This is not how you would normally deliver. What's happening other than do you have personal issues? And I think that helped me. But the aspect of delegation, to be honest, I think that you've just said something that has just blows my mind up. Talk about micromanaging. How do I approach that?
Yeah. Don't micromanage. That's the big one. It's the temptation. Now, are your team sat next to you or in an office, or are they all online on remote?
Online. Everyone.
Me too.
Online.
Me too. Yeah.
Ooh.
So that's where people end up micromanaging because we can't see things. So as a human being, our psychology, we crave certainty. And if we don't get certainty, we try and create it, which is why micromanaging happens. Because it's like, I can't see that you've done every task, so I want you to tell me you've done every task. What we've got to do is understand why we have the need to micromanage. We have a motto in my team, which is no news is bad news. Ooh. So if our team don't talk for 2 days, then I'm like, what's happened? Whereas as long as the team are communicating in our group saying this has been done or this has happened, it's about understanding that, and that creates the certainty. We do it through communication. So I recommend doing it through communication and through task management. So like organization. So having even as simple as a task management software, I set one up 4 years ago so that I could not necessarily micromanage, but just micro watch, like see that it's been done and I don't need to ask, right? And now I don't even know my login because they're all doing the work. So I don't need to check, but it gave me the certainty that if I did need to see, has something been done, I can see it. So the key with micromanaging is we've got to tune into ourselves and say, why do I feel the need to micromanage?
Right.
Maybe they're not doing their job properly. So then the problem isn't micromanaging, it's training. Or is it the right person in the team? You've got to understand, why do I feel the need to micromanage? And ask yourself the question, if all the jobs got done and we got the results we wanted, would I still need to micromanage?
Big question. Yeah.
Right.
Very big question. Yeah. A lot to think about. If someone was to start building a brand right now and they were like, Chloe, I'm listening to you, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start, what would you say to them to help them on a good footing?
Oh, just go for it. I would say people think a brand is like a logo. They're like, oh, I need to have a nice logo, I need to have loads of new colors. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, that is really important, but that's not what the brand is. Your brand is what people say behind your back. So you got to think about, what do you want people to say behind your back? And the best way that I was never told, but I've now live and breathe, is, what are you passionate about? What is something that you actually care about? You actually, give something about, because that's what people will talk about. So I'm very vocal now. I talk really openly about the myths in the publishing world and the dangers of being an author and all that sort of stuff, and people that are best-selling authors but broke because they can't afford to pay the bills and it's not been done properly. Because I'm passionate about it, that's become my brand. So it's about, what are you passionate about? Just start talking about it. Don't be afraid. The worst that can happen is it doesn't go down well and you delete it off social media. Like, there's literally people will forget in a month's time. So just go out, put yourself out there, decide what you want to stand for. Like, what values do you have that you think, I really want to talk about this, and just go for it. I used to have this belief where I was like, I don't want to be 7 figures. I don't want to be a millionaire. Like, 7-figure business, 7-figure problems. That's what I used to always say, right? And then my mentor said to me one day, but Chloe, think about how many more people you can help when you've got a 7-figure business. Ooh. Think about how many more lives you're changing, how many more books you're publishing. And as soon as you start seeing that, you think, do you know what? Building a business with money isn't a bad thing. And actually, so if you don't need the money right now, then spend time building a brand that you're really passionate about. If you do, find one you're passionate about and that pays the bills, right? So maybe there's an online course you can create, or a coaching company, or a book you want to write, or find products you can sell. Do what you need to do that works best for you, but there's no point in doing it all, being poor, and not actually being the best version of yourself, because then you're going to learn to hate it, not love it.
Right. One of the themes that I kind of feel from you, just talking to you and feeding off your energy, is that you invest a lot in yourself and you invest a lot in the people around you. And I wonder how you approach that, because I understand the investment when you're building a brand, or whether you're a career person, and this will apply to everybody. The amount of energy you put into building yourself is directly proportionate to the results you will get from whatever thing you're doing. So how do you approach personal development in your own career or in your own journey? And what's the place of it?
It's the top priority for me. It's above anything else in my business, because when I first started, I was all about business. I was like, I need to build the biggest brand. I need to write the book. I need to do all this. But I didn't know what my place was in that. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've really focused on, who am I though? Like, who am I showing up as? Why am I bothering? Like, I'd hear all these people on stages and being like, I've got a vision to change 10 million people's lives. And I was like, I don't have that. I just felt like I was missing something. And it was because I didn't develop myself. So I would say personal development is the number one priority for me. And it depends on what that looks like, right? Whether that is through, hobbies, or through learning about myself. But as a leader, I think there's a risk as a business owner and entrepreneur that your business can grow and develop. But if you don't grow and develop, you're going to get left behind, or you're going to break your business and it's going to come back down to your size.
Or it won't even grow by you not growing.
Exactly. Yeah. But I've seen businesses grow fast, and someone, let's say business partnerships, one of the partners isn't ready for it and they sabotage it by accident because they don't know. They're not ready to receive that, right? And it's really dangerous. And so the way I see it, to come back to what you said about investing your time and your money and stuff in yourself and in developing you, I see it like a container. we always have to stretch the container to which we can withstand. So if you'd have asked me 3 years ago, the amount of stress I could handle in my container probably would have been quite small. Whereas now, because I've done so much development on myself, I can handle more stress and therefore my business can grow bigger.
Yeah.
It's about stretching that container all the time. And every opportunity I get, whether it's a financial investment or an opportunity of time and maybe giving up part of myself, I've got to think to myself, how much of my container am I going to stretch? And am I ready for that?
And I'm just listening to you right now and I'm wondering what you are focused on. Let me put that into perspective. For everyone, at every stage, there's always a focus. For example, when you start, the idea is just make your first $100, make your first 1,000. And at some point when you make your first 1,000, you're like, oh, okay, I want to go maybe for the first 10, for the first 15. And then the thing that I realized is that maybe the moment you start getting to a little comfortable place, the focus moves away from you. And sometimes it shifts. For different people, it's different. For me, sometimes it moves to, I just want to make money to make sure that the people around me are okay. If my mom calls up, I could get stuff done. If I have a girlfriend, I could provide for her. If my junior ones, I could do stuff for them. And then further down the line, the focus moves a little bit from just wanting to make money to leaving an impact. You're like, yeah, it's not just about providing for people, but maybe I want to leave a greater impact. And what phase would you say you are and how are you approaching that for yourself and on your journey?
It's been a really interesting thought process, actually, because I've been working on this myself in the last sort of 6 months. I've never been driven by money, ever. Even when I had like my 6-figure salary as a director. I don't know why. Obviously I need it to pay the bills, but I've never been like, I want to make more. I'm always like, oh, cool, that's enough. Like, that's good. I'm happy, right? And I've always been driven more by like the status and the achievement. Like, I want to feel like I've achieved something. I want to feel good. So even now when I make sales in the business, it's not like a yay, X amount of money. It's like, yeah, cool, we got a new client. It's just a different perspective. But recently my part in the stage I'm at is changing, because now our goals as a business and as me is not actually growing the revenue, even though that is a goal. It's actually removing me from the day to day. So my goal now where I'm at is I want to have more time freedom, because why do you start a business otherwise, right? I'd rather have focus on that as a priority. So it's a bit of like the boring bit of business that people don't talk about, but what we're really working on is scaling the team and scaling the people. And I've just been on interviews all day, interviewing people to join the team today. And it's just like, every time I'm so grateful. I'm like, I'm meeting these people. And I'm like, I can't believe I can afford to pay them, like they're going to come and join our team. And it's been so incredible. And I think that's where I'm up to now is I want to invest our money and our profits in growing the team so that I can do what I love and be, full of energy and focus on my own development and speaking and podcasting, because then I can find more people that need our help.
And in this phase, what do you think, and I'm just curious, I know you are in the process, but you could still share a bit about what do you think you're going to be looking at this phase, taking yourself away from the business? Is it going to be the systems? Is it going to be the people? What will be your focus at this stage?
Good question. I would say once we've done that, it will be growth again. It'll be right now that we've built a stable team that doesn't need me involved and they've really scaled without me or got the foundations, then it is scale. So it's like, right, what's the next milestone? Maybe then it'll be like, right, let's stretch our finances. Maybe we move to other countries. Maybe we buy other businesses. Like we've been in talks with, acquiring other companies into our group. And that's where I would say it's really scaling our services at that point. But I'm a massive believer in getting things done, working really well, and then scaling rather than like trying to scale and grow. And there's like loads of holes to disappear. Yeah.
True. So if you were to restart your journey again, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? Forget about you being an accountant. Let's say you were supposed to start your journey, 20-year-old self. Speak to young Chloe.
Well, I'd probably tell young Chloe to get her stuff together and sort out what she's working on and believe in herself, probably. Because back then, even at 24, I just didn't really think I was just very comfortable all the time. I was like satisfied. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Like I was very good at adapting. Oh, cool. I'll get given that job. I'll adapt. Never did I actually ask myself, what do I really want in my life? So that's what I would say to young Chloe. Like, what do you really want? What is it? One of the most powerful questions my mentor asked me once was, what would you love to create?
Ooh.
And I ask myself that on a weekly basis now. Like, it's not what do I want to do this week? It's what I love to create this week. And it doesn't have to be creating new ideas. It could be like creating more time for myself, creating more space in my diary. Like, it doesn't have to be something new. It's just, what would you love this week? And that's what I would ask her. I would say to her, what would you love? What would you love? And then what needs to happen to do it?
Right. And if someone was to, I know that I'm rushing through my last questions, but if someone was to work with your team in publishing their next book, what are the strategies and what would you tell them to be the expectations or the definitely number ones?
I love that. So
Not a guarantee, but yes, because you know you've done it. Get to something times you probably know how to do that. But what's the process, Chloe?
Yeah, the process, we work with a handful of authors every year. We focus on people applying to work with us, and then we will select them based on their author. Ironically, people say to me, oh, do you not need to read the book? It sounds crazy, but I actually publish an author, not necessarily the book, because a book can change, right? So if I feel like I can work with an author to like really craft a good book, even if they've written a book, I'm like, let's work on it together. The best thing to do is to work with your publisher before you start writing. So where we do our best work with our writing mentors is where somebody's got an idea and then we craft it and mold them. We mentor them through the process. So I would say first steps is just get your team around you earlier, have a chat with the publisher, have a chat with us, do what you need to do to get those conversations moving, because then you get the guidance and the support on the journey. And then the process is really to just write it. Don't try and be perfect. Don't be the person that writes and then forgets about it. And a year later, you're like, I haven't opened the document, like just keep writing a bit every day and then pass it into the hands of someone that knows what they're doing. It's heartbreaking the amount of books that don't ever get read because they're on Amazon, self-published, don't get marketed. They don't know how to market the book. And you look at it and they sell like 10 copies and it's probably their family. And it's just heartbreaking, the amount of effort that's gone into it.
About how long? What's the time frame? Let's say that I was to work with your team to write and publish my book. What's a good time frame to have in setting expectations?
So we typically say 3 months to write it from scratch. So if you've never written a word before, 3 months to be guided by us in writing it, and about 3 to 4 months to launch it. So a lot of our authors have gone from idea to launch in 7 months.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Chloe, if you were to start again, what would you do differently?
The whole thing again, like the whole business, everything.
The way you're asking me is like...
I knew. I would write my book way earlier, definitely. Okay. I wasted 3 years in business without a book, and the difference having a book has been game-changing. So that definitely would happen. I would start my podcast earlier as well, because as you know, when you have a podcast, you end up attracting really cool people. I would get a mentor from day one. When I started my business, I couldn't afford mentoring, and I worked really hard and found a mentor after that. But it's so much better when you have a mentor, or even a mentorship community where you all share ideas, like a mastermind. Like that is just game changing, because then they see things that you can't see. They see potential in you. So I would say, write my book earlier, do my podcast earlier, get a mentor, and just fully commit, like believe that it's possible. That's what I would do differently. Not like one foot in, one foot out. Like, oh, maybe I'll go back and get a job later. Like, no, this is the route. Just go for it.
Yeah. Mentorship, all for it. I think that I always say that there's nothing you're trying to do that someone around the world has not done before. So it's kind of like it's the same. If I want to start a podcast like I'm doing, I'll go out there, figure out who's already succeeding in it. I just take their strategy and I model it. Then I commit to doing it. So a bit of my journey when I started back in the online space blogging. And I remember when I started back in Cameroon, because in Cameroon we had a crisis which kind of led to it's a political crisis in the country. It became very tough around 2017. You had a lot of the back and forth between the military and a group of civilians who were revolting, and we had sometimes shooting back and forth. And that was when I started blogging. And so because of that, people on the internet wanted to know what was happening around. You want to know what's happening right now. And so I was like, okay, that was my opportunity to start writing politics and things like that. And I remember it was one promise that I made to myself. Arrey, you're going to publish one article every single day for the next 1,000 days. If this does not work out, and then leave blogging and just realize this is not for you. And then that promise, because of that, honestly, I didn't keep to the promise all the 1,000 days, but definitely the days that I missed, the next day I could publish 2 or 3 articles. And the astonishing thing is that when I published maybe around 300 or the 400 day, a lot of things opened up to me. When people saw that I could use websites very well, they'll be like, Arrey, could you come and train our team in-house on how to use websites? When they saw that, okay, I could literally use social media, we were getting around maybe 30 to 50,000 views. They're like, Arrey, there's this event coming on social media. I thought there's no better person to talk about social media than you. Do you want to come and speak? Yep, I'll go and rehearse. I think about how to speak. And when they saw that I spoke, it went very well. Arrey, do you want to come in and look at our social media? Do you want to see what you could tweak from it? And so I think all of it started because of, definitely, I made the promise. So the things you're talking about, mentorship, and also because I made the promise to be consistent. From you to me, from a big gun to someone who is starting in the podcasting space, what would you tell me? What would you say to me right now?
Consistency is so key, with podcasting, delivering to your guests, like really good. And do what you're doing, like ask people, pitch yourself to go, pitch people to come on your podcast, like when I met you and you were like, will you come on the podcast? I was like, yeah. Like, I think a lot of people love it being interviewed on podcasts, especially podcasters, because we are always the one interviewing normally. So I would say just keep pitching yourself, saying to people, will you come on my podcast? Put yourself out there, get the bigger guests, get some really cool guests that aren't that well known. A lot of the guests I've interviewed are not celebrities, but they have an amazing story. And I've also interviewed some celebrities who are quite dull, really, and not actually the most fun to interview. So I would say just go for people that, you really connect with and you vibe with, and just keep doing it. You're doing something awesome.
Right. Thank you, Chloe. The last question we always ask on the podcast is, when all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered as Chloe?
Oh gosh, inspiring. If I was being remembered as someone saying about me, she was really inspiring, she really inspired me, then that's my favorite thing, because I think inspiration goes beyond action and motivation. It's deeper than that, and it helps people really believe that something's possible, and that's what I want to be remembered for.
Right. Thank you, Chloe. I do appreciate you coming on the podcast. When I spoke to you and you said yes, and the reason you told me you were going to come is because you said when you thought about how you started, you were like, somebody gave you an opportunity for you to be able to be where you are. And so you saying that to me was profound. I thought about it. I was like, okay, this is someone who has a good heart. So I want to appreciate you for doing that, and also for bringing your energy here on this podcast. So thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and keep doing incredible things.
If you just enjoyed this episode, the chances are that you're going to enjoy other amazing episodes that we've recorded, so you can check that out somewhere around this video. Before you go, please make sure you check our 3 boxes. First things first, please make sure to hit the subscribe or the follow button down below, because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach on this platform, and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Second, a lot of friends always reach out to me and say something like, hey Arrey, I really did enjoy this particular segment of this episode. Pick up your phone and send this to a friend and say, hey, check this out, between 10 to 15 minutes. There's something very important I'd love you to see. Number 3, please make sure to check out the links in the description for very helpful resources. You're going to find the link to join the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for friends who want to learn and master a high-income digital marketing skill. Whether your goal is to build your personal brand, become a freelancer, or get a job in digital marketing, the Smart Club is going to be the right place for you. So before you go, please make sure to tick those 3 boxes. Like I always say, my friends, cheers to many more years of shamelessly living and crazily excelling in passion and purpose. And I'll speak to you in the next episode.